The storm had been merciless, turning the mountain trail into a treacherous maze of loose rocks and rushing water. Dr. Samuel. Chun pulled his jacket tighter as he made his way back to the remote research station, his boots squelching in the mud. As the lead biologist for the Wildlife Conservation Project, he'd grown accustomed to these harsh conditions in the Carpathian Mountains, but tonight felt different, more hostile. A sharp cry pierced through the wind, distinctly non-human yet, filled with an intelligence that made his breath catch. Following the sound, Sam discovered a figure huddled behind a massive boulder, partially hidden by the twisted roots of an ancient oak. At first glance, she appeared human, a young woman, with long dark hair matted with rain and blood. But as lightning illuminated her face, he saw features that belonged to no earthly lineage: elongated ears, eyes that reflected light like a cat's, and skin that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly luminescence. She was one of the Dracani, the dragon-blooded people his grandmother had whispered about in old Romanian folklore. But seeing her now, wounded and terrified, Sam realized the stories had been wrong. This was no fearsome creature of legend, but a frightened being in desperate need of help. "Please," he said softly, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. "I'm a doctor. You're hurt." The woman girl, really. She couldn't be more than 20, pressed herself further against the rock, her eyes wide with terror. When she spoke, her voice was melodic despite the fear. "Stay back, human. I know what your kind does to mine. The old stories. They say you devour our hearts to steal our power." Sam's chest tightened. How many of her people had died because of such myths? How many humans had killed out of fear and superstition? "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, slowly removing his medical kit from his backpack. "My name is Samuel. I've spent my life protecting creatures others fear. Let me help you." Blood seeped through her torn clothing, and her breathing was labored. Whatever had happened to her, she was in serious trouble. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and exposure would kill her long before any imagined human threat could. "The stories my people tell," she whispered, her strength fading. "They say humans are monsters who feed on our kind. That you hunt. Use for sport. That you—" She winced as pain shot through her injured side. "Stories can be wrong," Sam said gently, taking a cautious step forward. "I've heard tales about your people too, that you're savage beasts who steal children. But looking at you now, I see someone who needs help, not a monster." Thunder crashed overhead, and the girl shivered violently. Sam knew he had only moments to convince her before shock set in completely. The choice was hers, but he hoped his grandmother's. Bedtime stories about the Draconi's wisdom would prove true. The research station was sparse but warm, solar panels and a small generator providing enough power for basic amenities. Sam had managed to convince the injured Dracani woman to accept his help, though she remained as tense as a cornered wildcat. Her name was Lyra. She'd finally told him, and she was far from home. "Your people," Sam said as he carefully cleaned the gash on her shoulder. "They live in the deep mountains?" Lyra nodded, wincing as the antiseptic stung. "In the high valleys where your kind cannot reach. My father is chieftain of the Shadow Peak clan. We've hidden for generations, ever since." "The great hunting began? The great hunting?" Sam paused in his work, meeting her golden eyes. 300 years ago, human armies swept through these mountains. They killed my people by the hundreds, believing our hearts held the secret to immortality. Those who survived fled to the highest peaks, and we've stayed hidden ever since. Sam's stomach churned. History was full of such atrocities. Humans had always feared what they didn't understand. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "That should never have happened." Lyra studied his face, searching for deception. "You truly didn't know?" "I knew the stories, but I thought they were just folklore." My grandmother used to tell me about the Draconi, but she spoke of them with respect, not fear. Sam finished, bandaging her wound, his movements gentle and professional. She said your people were guardians of the old forests, that you could speak to the wind and heal the land. Your grandmother was wise, Lyra said, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. We are connected to the natural world in ways humans have forgotten. But that connection makes us vulnerable too. The injury you're treating, it came from iron weapons. My own people's warriors were tracking me. Tracking you? Why? Lyra's expression grew pained. I was caught speaking with a human researcher near our territory. Dr. Elena Vasquez, she studies the climate changes affecting our mountain ecosystem. The Council believes any contact with humans is treason, punishable by exile or death. Sam recognized the name. Elena was part of a neighboring research team studying glacial melt patterns. You are trying to help her research? The old ways of my people include deep knowledge of weather patterns, animal migrations, seasonal changes. I thought sharing this knowledge might help both our peoples prepare for the challenges ahead. But the Council saw it as betrayal. As Sam prepared a simple meal of soup and bread, he watched Lyra carefully. She remained alert, ready to flee at any sign of danger. Yet there was something else in her expression. A desperate hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she'd found someone who saw her as more than a monster from ancient stories. Elena mentioned strange readings in her reports, Sam said, handing her a warm bowl. Temperature fluctuations that didn't match any known patterns. That was your people's knowledge, wasn't it? Lyra nodded, accepting the food with trembling hands. The mountains are changing faster than ever before. Without cooperation between our peoples, both may suffer. But fear runs deep on both sides. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Sam was checking Lyra's wounds when voices echoed from outside the research station. Through the window, he saw 3 figures approaching 2 humans and something that definitely wasn't human. Friends of yours? Sam asked, noticing how Lyra tensed. Kale, she whispered, recognizing the tall figure with silver-streaked hair. And predatory grace, my father's war chief. And those humans with him, ... double quotes, Sam opened the door before they could knock. The first human was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and weather-beaten hands, Dr. Elena Vasquez, whom Lyra had mentioned. The second was a young man with the build of a climber and the wary expression of someone who'd seen too much. The third figure was clearly Draconi, like Lyra, but older and bearing the scars of a warrior. Dr. Chun, Elena said, relief evident. In her voice, we've been searching all night. Is she alive and healing? Sam replied, stepping aside to let them enter. Though I suspect this isn't a social call. Kale's golden eyes fixed on Sam with predatory intensity. Human, you will release our kindling now, or face the consequences. I'm not holding her prisoner, Sam said calmly. She's free to leave whenever she chooses. It's not that simple, the young human climber interjected. I'm Marcus Webb, Elena's research partner. We've been monitoring increased military activity in the region. Someone's been feeding information to extremist groups about non-human activity in these mountains. Elena nodded grimly. There's a paramilitary organization called the Iron Covenant that's been hunting what they call genetic aberrations. They've been systematically tracking and eliminating anyone they deem non-human. The old hatred lives on, Kale said, his hand moving to the curved blade at his side. This is why contact with humans is forbidden. It brings only death. Lyra struggled to stand, Sam steadying her with a gentle hand. Uncle Kale, this human saved my life. Not all of them are like the hunters. One act of kindness does not erase centuries of betrayal, Kale replied, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Elena stepped forward, her expression urgent. That's just it. We don't have centuries. The climate data Lyra shared with me revealed something catastrophic. The glacial melt is accelerating at an impossible rate. Without the Draconi's knowledge of the mountain's natural cycles, we can't predict the landslides, flooding, or ecosystem collapse that's coming. And without human technology and resources, Sam added, understanding dawning, your people can't evacuate the affected areas or prepare adequate shelter. Marcus pulled out a tablet, showing satellite imagery of the surrounding peaks. The Iron Covenant has been using environmental disasters as cover for their operations. They're planning to trigger controlled avalanches in the high valleys, claiming it's necessary for geological stability. But the real goal is to eliminate the Draconi. Settlements. Kale's expression darkened. When? 3 days, Alina said. We intercepted their communications. They're bringing in military-grade explosives disguised as geological survey equipment. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Natural. Enemies forced to work together against a common threat. It was a scenario that would test everything both species believed about each other. Asterisk. The abandoned mining facility that served as their base of operations buzzed with unprecedented activity. Human technology mixed with Draconi natural abilities as two species worked together for the first time in centuries. Sam watched Elena and Lyra poring over topographical maps while Marcus tested communication equipment with Kale, who seemed to understand human technology with surprising ease. The Iron Covenant has positioned charges at 7 key points, Elena explained, her finger tracing the mountain ridges. They're using the cover of environmental monitoring to plant explosives that will trigger a massive cascade failure. The White Claw settlement will be completely buried, Lyra said, her voice tight with emotion. 300 souls including children and elders who cannot flee quickly. Kale studied the human weapons Marcus had procured from contacts in the conservation service. These projectile weapons are crude but effective. However, reaching the explosive sites requires climbing. Skills beyond most humans. That's where we come in, Sam said, checking his gear. I've been rock climbing since I was 12. Marcus has guide certification for technical mountain rescues. We can handle the human equipment while your people use their natural abilities. The risk is enormous, Elena warned. If the Iron Covenant detects our interference, they'll accelerate their timeline. We'll have minutes, not hours. Lyra looked up from the maps, her golden eyes reflecting determination. My people have another advantage. We can communicate across great distances without your electronic devices. The mountain winds carry our voices to those who know how to listen. Coordinate the evacuation while we handle the bombs, Marcus said. But we need to move now. Weather. Reports show a storm system moving in that will make climbing impossible. As they prepared to leave, Sam noticed Kale watching him with an unreadable expression. The Draconi warrior approached, his movements fluid and predatory. Human, Kale said, his voice low. You realize that if we succeed, everything changes. Your people and mine can no longer pretend the other doesn't exist. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Sam replied, checking his climbing harness. This mountain has room for both our peoples. It's the hatred that's too small. And if we fail? Sam met the warrior's golden gaze. Then we fail together, fighting for something worth saving. The ascent began in darkness, 2 species climbing, side by side toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of both their peoples. Above them, the Iron Covenant's explosives waited like deadly flowers scattered across the mountainside, ready to bloom in destruction. Lyra had insisted on joining the mission despite her injuries, her intimate knowledge of the mountain's hidden paths proving invaluable. As they climbed, Sam found himself marveling at the Draconi's natural grace. They moved across the rock face like dancers, their movements so fluid they seemed to defy gravity. There, Lyra whispered, pointing to a camouflaged installation on a narrow ledge, the first site. Sam could see armed figures moving around the equipment, their military bearing unmistakable. The Iron Covenant wasn't just planning destruction. They were prepared to defend their positions with lethal force. Remember, Elena's voice crackled through their earpieces, we're not just disabling bombs. We're proving that cooperation is possible. As they prepared for the assault, Sam realized that regardless of the outcome, nothing would ever be the same. The age of hiding was ending, one way or another. The battle on the mountainside was swift and decisive. The Iron Covenant soldiers, trained for warfare against human enemies, were unprepared for the coordinated assault of two species working in perfect harmony. Dracani moved like shadows, their natural abilities allowing them to approach unseen, while human technology provided precise strikes against the explosive devices. Sam rappelled down the cliff face toward the final installation, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Below him, Lyra guided his descent with hand signals, her golden eyes tracking the movements of the remaining soldiers. Clear, Marcus's voice crackled through the radio. Last device neutralized. The Iron Covenant's leader, a scarred man named Colonel Reeves, emerged from behind a boulder with his weapon raised. You're too late, he snarled. The world will know what monsters hide in these mountains. The only monsters here are the ones driven by hate, Sam replied, his voice carrying clearly across the rocky terrain. Kale materialized behind the colonel like a wraith, his blade pressing against the man's throat. Your weapons are silenced. Your mission failed. Surrender. But it was Lyra who stepped forward, her injured form somehow radiating a quiet strength that made everyone pause. Colonel Reeves, she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her people. You've spent years hunting us based on stories and fear. But look around you. Humans and Dracani working together, protecting life instead of destroying it. Which of us is the real monster? Reeves stared at her, his weapon wavering. You're not what we expected. Stories change when you meet the people they're about, Helena said, climbing up from the lower ledge. The Dracani have knowledge that could help us address climate change, natural disasters, sustainable living. We have technology that could improve their lives and protect their communities. Fear has kept us apart for centuries, but it doesn't have to keep us apart forever. The colonel's surrender marked the end of more than just a military operation. Word of the cooperation spread quickly through both communities, carried by human communication networks and Dracani wind speech alike. The initial reactions were mixed fear, anger, and suspicion from both sides, but the undeniable success of the joint mission had planted a seed of possibility. 6 months later, Sam stood in the center of a remarkable site, a joint research station built into the mountainside, where humans and Dracani worked side by side. The facility combined human engineering with Dracani harmony with the natural environment, creating something neither species could have achieved alone. The evacuation protocols are complete, Lyra reported, her injuries long healed. She now served as the primary liaison between the two peoples, her courage in reaching out to Elena having made her a bridge between worlds. Climate monitoring stations are operational across the range, Elena added, reviewing data streams that combined human sensors with Dracani environmental knowledge. We're getting predictive data that's unprecedented in accuracy. Kale entered the briefing room, his warriors' bearing now directed toward protection rather than conflict. The High Valley settlements have agreed to limited contact protocols. Trust grows slowly, but it grows. Sam looked out the window at the vista beyond, where human researchers and Dracani guides worked together on the mountainside. Children from both species played in the facility's common areas, their laughter carrying on the wind like music. My grandmother always said the mountains held secrets, he mused. I never imagined the greatest secret would be how much we have in common. Lyra joined him at the window, her presence no longer a source of fear, but of hope. The old stories spoke of devouring and destruction, she said, but perhaps it's time for new stories. Stories of understanding, of cooperation, of the strength. That comes from embracing our differences instead of fearing them. As the sun set over the Carpathian peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had begun with a wounded stranger and a choice to show kindness instead of fear. That single act of compassion had grown into something neither species had dared to imagine. A shared future where they could face the challenges ahead together. The mountains would always be dangerous. The climate would continue to change, and there would always be those who chose fear over understanding. But now, for the first time in centuries, there was hope that ancient hatreds could be transformed into new possibilities. In the distance, a Draconi voice rose in song, answered by human voices in harmony. The sound echoed across the peaks, carrying a message that would reshape the world. Different species, different cultures, but one shared home beneath the endless sky.